the world's most hidden paradise. Almost no tourist knows it exists. Picture this: warm, powdery white sand under your feet, water so clear you can see your own shadow on the seafloor 20 feet down, a palm tree leaning just far enough over the water to give you shade without blocking the view. Now picture that same scene, but with no resorts, no influencers lined up for the same photo, no beach club blasting music, just you, maybe a dozen other people on the entire island, and water that looks retouched even though it isn't. Here's the strange part. This place isn't hidden because it's impossible to find. It's not buried in some unexplored jungle or guarded by a government that bans visitors. It's hidden because of a decision made by the people who actually live there. A decision most travelers have never even heard of, and one that has quietly kept this paradise almost untouched for the better part of a century. And here's what makes it even stranger. This isn't some 5-day trek into the middle of nowhere. It's a short flight from a major international airport, sitting less than an hour from a modern capital city with skyscrapers, shopping malls, and traffic jams. In other words, the contrast isn't distance. It's that one of the most photogenic places on the planet sits practically next door to modern civilization. And somehow, almost nobody talks about it. We dug through travel reports, indigenous governance records, and first-hand accounts from the small number of travelers who've actually made it here to understand exactly why this place has managed to stay off almost every travel bucket list on Earth. By the end of this video, you'll understand not just where this place is, but why it might stay hidden for a very long time. And stick around till the end, because the way you actually get permission to visit is unlike anything else on this list. Let's get into it. Where in the world are we talking about? Off the Caribbean coast of Panama, scattered across roughly 100 miles of turquoise sea, sit more than 350 islands. Most people have never heard the name of this region. Guna Yala, also known as the Blas Islands. To put the scale in perspective, that's more islands than Hawaii, Fiji, and the Maldives combined, packed into a single stretch of coastline. Most travelers fly straight over on their way to more famous Caribbean destinations. Of those hundreds of islands, only about 49 are inhabited. The rest are exactly what you're picturing right now: small, uninhabited strips of white sand with a handful of palm trees, completely untouched, with nobody around for miles. Some are barely bigger than a swimming pool. You could genuinely have one entirely to yourself for an afternoon. So here's the obvious question. If it's this beautiful and this close to a major country's mainland, why isn't it already covered in resorts? For comparison, think about how quickly other Caribbean island chains got developed once word got out. The Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, even parts of the Riviera Maya. Once a destination gets attention, resorts tend to follow within a decade or two, then cruise ports, then duty-free shopping strips built specifically for tourists. Guna Yala has had a century of exposure to nearby development, sitting a stone's throw from a bustling capital city. And it is almost none of that. That alone should tell you something unusual is going on here. The twist: this isn't an accident of geography. It's a law. You'd assume a place this stunning would already be swallowed up by luxury hotel chains. It's not, and the reason isn't remoteness or lack of investment interest. It's a rule made by the people who live there. Guna Yala is self-governed by the Guna people, an indigenous group who fought for and won an extraordinary level of autonomy from the Panamanian government back in 1925, after an uprising known as the Guna Revolution. Since then, the region has operated almost like its own semi-independent territory inside Panama. And one of the most important rules to come out of that autonomy is this: outsiders are not allowed to own land or build large developments here. No foreign hotel chains, no big resorts, no high-rise beach clubs. Instead, decisions about tourism, land use, and development are made collectively by the Guna people themselves, through a governing body called the General Congress. If a proposal doesn't align with their values or their vision for their own islands, it simply doesn't happen, no matter how much money is behind it. The 1925 uprising itself is a story most people outside Panama have never heard. At the time, the Panamanian government was pushing policies aimed at suppressing Guna customs and forcing assimilation into mainstream Panamanian culture. In response, Guna leaders organized an armed revolt, and after a tense standoff, the government agreed to recognize Guna Yala as a self-governing territory with its own laws, leadership structure, and control over land use. That agreement has held, largely intact, for a century. It's part of why the Guna's own flag still flies alongside the Panamanian flag across the region today. A visible, everyday reminder of an autonomy that was fought for, not granted out of convenience. That single decision, made a century ago, is the entire reason this place still looks the way it does. While nearby Caribbean destinations turned into resort strips over the last few decades, Guna Yala stayed almost exactly the same. What you'll actually see when you get there. The islands themselves range from tiny, deserted sandbars to small inhabited communities where Guna families live in simple thatched roof homes built close together, often just steps from the water's edge. Some islands are so densely packed with homes that from a boat they look almost like a floating village. Others, especially the ones further from the main communities, are completely empty. No buildings, no people, just sand, palm trees, and reef. The water is the kind of turquoise most people assume is edited in photos. It isn't. The reef systems surrounding many of the islands are still largely intact, since large-scale development and industrial fishing have never been allowed to take hold here the way they have elsewhere in the Caribbean. Snorkeling here often means swimming over coral and schools of fish without another tourist in sight, something that's become genuinely rare in most Caribbean destinations. Many visitors describe island hopping by small motorboat between deserted islets, sometimes stopping to have an entire beach to themselves for a few hours before moving to the next one. It's less a curated resort experience and more like being handed the keys to an entire archipelago with almost nobody else around. The marine life is part of what makes this so hard to believe once you're actually in the water. Because large commercial fishing fleets have never been given free rein here, some of the reefs remain dense with soft coral, sea fans, and fish populations that have all but disappeared from more heavily trafficked parts of the Caribbean. Sea turtles nesting on remote stretches of sand, starfish scattered across shallow sandbanks you can wade out to at low tide, and the kind of visibility underwater that makes even an average snorkeler feel like they stumbled into a nature documentary. It's the kind of scene that almost anywhere else in the Caribbean would already have a beach bar and a row of sunbeds built right on top of it. The culture is just as remarkable as the scenery. This is where the story gets even more interesting. The Guna people haven't just protected their land, they've protected an entire culture that predates modern Panama itself. Guna women are especially known for creating molas, intricately hand-stitched textile art panels sewn using a reverse applique technique, often depicting animals, geometric patterns, or scenes from daily life. These aren't souvenirs mass-produced for tourists. Many molas take days or weeks to complete, and the technique has been passed down through generations of women in Guna communities. Guna society also holds on to certain matrilineal traditions, where lineage and property historically pass through the mother's side of the family, a structure that stands out in a region where most surrounding cultures follow patrilineal traditions. Visitors who stay in Guna-run guest houses often get a genuine, unscripted look at daily island life, communal cooking, fishing trips, and evenings spent simply sitting together as a community, not performed for an audience, but because that's just how life here works. Language is another piece of this that surprises visitors. While Spanish is spoken as a second language across the region, many Guna communities primarily speak Guna Gaya, their own indigenous language, in day-to-day life. Children grow up bilingual, moving between the two languages depending on who they're talking to, and community meetings are conducted according to traditional protocols that have remained largely unchanged for generations. It's a small detail, but it reinforces the bigger picture. This isn't a culture performing traditional life for tourists. It's a culture living it, whether or not anyone from the outside world happens to be watching. Here's the catch. Because paradise like this always comes with trade-offs. This is not a 5-star vacation. If you're picturing air conditioning, reliable Wi-Fi, and a menu with 12 dinner options, recalibrate your expectations now. Electricity on many of the smaller islands is limited, sometimes running only a few hours a day from a generator. Hot showers are rare. Most accommodations are extremely basic, thatched roof cabins with a bed, a mosquito net, and not much else. Meals are simple and often repetitive, usually fresh fish, rice, and plantains, since almost everything has to be brought in by boat. Cash is essential. Cards are not reliably accepted almost anywhere in the region, and ATMs are virtually non-existent once you're out on the islands, so you need to arrive with enough cash for your entire stay. There's also a cultural trade-off worth understanding, and it's actually the point of this whole video. Because the Guna govern their own territory, visiting isn't as simple as just showing up and booking a hotel room through an app. Certain islands require permission or a small community fee to visit, since tourism revenue is one of the primary ways these communities sustain themselves without outside development. This isn't a bureaucratic inconvenience, it's the exact mechanism that has kept this place from turning into another overdeveloped tropical destination. Every dollar you pay in these community fees goes directly toward the same self-governance that has protected the islands for 100 years. There's also the reality of limited medical infrastructure to consider. The nearest hospital-level care is typically back in Panama City, which means anyone traveling here needs to be reasonably healthy, comfortable with a bit of risk, and prepared with basic travel insurance that covers medical evacuation. This isn't meant to scare anyone off. It's meant to set expectations correctly, because a huge part of why past visitors rate this trip so highly is that they arrived knowing exactly what they were getting into, rather than expecting a polished resort experience and being disappointed. So how do you actually get there? This is the part most travelers get wrong, so let's walk through it properly. Most trips start in Panama City. From there, you have two main options. The first is a small charter flight on a tiny propeller plane, landing directly on one of several grass or dirt airstrips scattered across the islands. These flights are short, usually less than 30 minutes, but seats are limited and schedules can shift based on weather, since many of these planes are flying into strips with no real air traffic infrastructure. The second option is a rugged 4x4 drive from Panama City through the mountains and jungle to the coast, followed by a boat transfer out to the islands. This route takes longer and is physically rougher, but it's significantly cheaper, and for many travelers, it becomes part of the adventure rather than just a logistics hurdle. Once you're actually in Guna Yala, transportation between islands is almost entirely by small boat, often arranged through your guest house host, since there's no public transit system connecting the islands to each other. Weather plays a bigger role here than most travelers expect. The Caribbean side of Panama gets a genuine rainy season, and both flights and boat transfers can be delayed or rerouted depending on conditions. So building a buffer day or two into your itinerary is a smart move rather than booking a tight connection straight through to your next destination. This isn't a place where delays are rare exceptions. They're simply part of how travel works when the infrastructure wasn't built around tourist convenience in the first place. Here's the detail that surprises almost everyone. Unlike most destinations where money alone gets you access, actually staying overnight in certain areas of Guna Yala effectively requires going through Guna-run guest houses or tour operators, because independent, unaffiliated tourism infrastructure largely doesn't exist here. In other words, the community itself functions as the gatekeeper. There's no international hotel booking site that can get you around that system, because the system was specifically designed so that outside money can't buy its way in. That's the real hidden mechanism behind this hidden paradise. It's not that nobody's found it, it's that the people who live there decide, island by island, exactly how much of it the rest of the world gets to see. Who is this actually for? If you're after infinity pools, cocktail service, and a curated resort experience, this isn't your destination. Guna Yala rewards a very specific kind of traveler, the kind who's willing to trade comfort for authenticity, who doesn't mind a few hours without electricity in exchange for an empty beach that looks like it belongs on a screensaver, and who's genuinely curious about a culture that has fought hard to remain exactly as it is. It's an incredible fit for adventurous couples, small groups of friends looking for something completely off the radar, and travelers who've already done the typical Caribbean resort trip and are craving something with more substance behind it. It's a much tougher sell for families with very young children, given the basic infrastructure, and it's simply not built for anyone who needs constant connectivity or modern comforts to enjoy a trip. It's also worth being honest about who this trip is not for. If your travel style leans heavily on reviews, ratings, and knowing exactly what you're getting before you arrive, this will feel uncomfortable. Very little about this destination is standardized. Guest houses vary widely in quality from island to island. There's no centralized booking platform to compare options, and a lot of the experience depends on word of mouth and the specific community you end up staying with. For travelers who thrive on that kind of unpredictability, it's part of the appeal. For travelers who need certainty, it's a legitimate reason to sit this one out. Bringing it all together. So there you have it, the world's most hidden paradise, and the real reason almost no tourist knows it exists. It's not lost. It's not undiscovered by geography. It's protected on purpose, by a community who decided, a century ago, that their islands weren't for sale, no matter what was offered. In a travel world where almost every beautiful place eventually gets swallowed by resorts, chain hotels, and the same 5 restaurants you'll find in every airport, Guna Yala stands as a rare example of a community actively choosing a different path. And somehow, against the odds, making it stick for 100 years and counting. And maybe that's the bigger lesson buried in all of this. We tend to assume that if a place is beautiful enough, it's only a matter of time before it gets discovered, developed, and eventually loved to death by its own popularity. Guna Yala quietly proves that isn't inevitable. Sometimes the people who call a place home get to decide how much of it the rest of the world is allowed to have, and sometimes that decision is exactly what keeps paradise looking like paradise. So tell me, would you trade a few hours of electricity and a hot shower for a completely empty island straight out of a postcard? Drop your answer in the comments, and if this changed the way you think about what hidden really means, stick around, because the next video reveals the last truly unclaimed places left on Earth. Spots so remote that no country has ever fully controlled them.